one nation,
one nation,
under
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
Liberty
justice.
and
And
justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, let us call to order the meeting. Madam Board Clerk, do we have any public communications or public comments?
We do not.
Thank you. And let's go to 1.5, the anticipated outcomes for the day. Dr. Benjamin, do you want me to read that out, or would you like to read it out, or shall I just?
It's up to you. I put your name there. I didn't know whether you want to do it or not. I didn't know it would be you to start. So congratulations. So
all right,
it's up to you.
Throw it right back out to you, and then you could take over from here.
Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Benjamin.
Okay, so I sent out a call to the 5 board members who were on before these two new ones were added, and I want to start by welcoming, I've already introduced myself to the 2 of you, and it's a pleasure to work with all of you again. So I asked for expected retreat outcomes, and the outcomes you see listed here are a compilation of what I received from the board members and things I knew you needed to get done that we talked about before. And I talked with Trustee Bonilla about this agenda, and that's how we came up with this one. And so we have 2 nights, we have 8 hours, and it's a really jam-packed agenda. And we may not finish it all. I don't want to rush you through it. I want us to take our time. And so this first goal, the development of a vision statement, is based on a need that you recognized yourselves as having to be fulfilled. And that need is for you to work more effectively as a board. And I want to show you, if Maisha would put up just this one page I included in the agenda of the, I think it's the next page. The one with the blue on it. The self-evaluation, the board leadership section. Yes. So if you look on this page, go down to, I think it's the 5th or 6th item there that said right there, hold it right there. Can you make it just a little bigger? And now I need to see the 3rd one from the bottom, and then the comments too. In blue, the 3rd one in blue from the table. Yes. So that one, you rated yourselves on this, 7 of you, and that one says board discussions and relationships reflect a climate of trust and respect. And the average there was 1, and that's the lowest rating you could give. And so that's an indication that work needs to be done in that area. And the average for this entire section on board leadership was 3, which is low. I mean, it should be 4 plus something if you're working in the way you should be. And I just want to run through the comments that you wrote, the board at that time, the 7. Need more pre-dialogue via workshops to understand each other's positions. Reinstate committees, that's a question. Do not have conversations about board decisions outside the board meeting, suggesting that there's a belief that that happens. Develop communication protocol that supports, requires trust and respect, stay in own lane. That's a recommendation from someone. Make interest of students key interest. Implement recommendations in reports. Have principled discussions driven by evidence and data when accusations are made against trustees. Refrain from attacks, suggesting that attacks are made apparently on a regular basis. Follow policy for dealing with members who violate the code of ethics. And I did attach the code of ethics to this document, to your agenda tonight. Stating and enforcing ground rules. Agree or disagree with civility. Define civility. Agree that every perspective, hold on a second. Shrink this a little bit, is respected and valued. Raise hand before speaking. establish time limit on speaking, talk more about education and students, which should be the focus and not on petty issues, review more data to make decisions, talk to issues and not to attacking people, consider how your vote affects students on issues, ensure that board is unified in its goals and that the chancellor is implementing those goals. So when I thought about this one in particular, I was thinking of a way to get at this so that you could have some dialogue, because these are serious issues. If you look at the very first retreat outcome, my recommendation and what we're going to do, and you've done a great job of doing the assignment for the people who are listening in, the board had homework. So the first one says that board vision statement, an outcome is to have a board vision statement and a commitment from each board member on exhibiting behaviors for achievement of this vision. Actions for consideration, and I got this from things that you gave me during the discussion, and I just want to read these, and you can think about them as you discuss the vision statement in two groups in a minute. Agreement on norms of civility at the board level, including how to deal with incivility and veering from the topic at hand into diatribes and unrelated rambling. A clear commitment and understanding of professional decorum and civility in public and private, particularly in public session. And this goes to, I could have gone a lot of different ways on this, but I wonder if as a board as a whole, you think about your image and how you're perceived by the public. You may not care, I don't know, but your behavior sends a message and it sets a tone for the people below you. It can dampen morale of the employees in the district because you're at the top and you have an image. And a question, and I don't think when you do your self-evaluation that you include others. It's possible for the board to do a 360 evaluation where you not only get input on your performance from yourselves as a group, but you can include other people within the district, people who regularly attend your board meetings, people within the community, so that you can see how you are perceived. I don't know that happens. I know that there are boards who do it, and maybe something you want to consider. But your behavior in a board meeting, especially now because we're on Zoom and it's how everybody's seeing you, establishes who you are as a group and establishes a reputation for the district, for you as board members, and makes a determination in the minds of some people of who wants to work in the district, of who wants to attend college here. It has a huge impact. Okay, another outcome people wanted, you said to me, ability to hear viewpoints, disagree with on positions rather than attack individuals, and reviewing and agreeing to use applicable board and administrative policy and procedures to resolve differences. So there are a couple of things on the agenda, and I just kind of decided on my own to put on here so that we could get at these outcomes. And so this first activity, and I sent to the board in a one-way communication. Yes, Cindy.
I'm sorry. I was trying to look for whatever reason, I'm not able to, oh, raise my hand is somewhere else. Okay, I'm so sorry. So Dr. Benjamin, because I know that we have such a full packed agenda, and I know that you've got so much to get through, but we have two brand new trustees who need a little bit of context, I think,
That's right,
for what we're discussing, because you're talking to us and I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't think that our two new trustees, Polk and Jenkins, they're going to make some big assumptions, and I'd rather them just kind of hear it directly.
And can I also, sorry, interject that we have our incoming student trustee, Yiruni. And she is joining us today. She'll be sworn in on January for our January meeting, but just wanted to share that
Oh,
she is
Thursday.
also in.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, and I don't know what happened in the orientation, so I guess I was making some assumptions too about board members, and I have to apologize because I did not include a kind of opening activity, kind of get acquainted, because I was thinking about the time. So I will stop now, and I think Trustee Bonilla, do you want to provide a context, or do you want me to?
Oh, no, that wasn't for me. I'm sorry. I'll hand that off to you, Chancellor, and anyone else who wants to provide some context.
Okay, well, thank you. So first of all, welcome to our new trustees. I'm really glad that you are here and part of our team. And welcome, student trustee Yuru. We're really glad to have you here. I know that the trustees have had a chance to introduce themselves at the last board meeting, but maybe we could do an introduction just for our student trustee. And then actually after that, I would like to hand it back to Dr. Benjamin to give the context. I came to the retreats in July, but I was coming in kind of as an added participant. So why don't we go around? We'll maybe start with President Reese, and then move through, and then maybe Yuru, you can tell us about yourself, and then we'll hand it back to Dr. Benjamin. You're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome, student trustee Yuru. Nice to see you. I am Cindy Napoli-Bellaris, the board chair, the president of the board this year. Welcome, welcome.
VP-UN.
Do we just want names? Do we want anything about ourselves? Background? Is there?
I think we probably want maybe a minute because you know we're trying not to take up too much time, but maybe some context would be helpful. Sure.
Yeah. I also would like to welcome our new student trustee. Could you pronounce your name for us? Yiru? Is it Yiruni? When you get a sec.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, you pronounce my name right. It's Iru.
Yiru?
Yes.
Okay, great. And what college are you from?
I'm currently attending Berkeley City College, but I'm also participating in the student government at Laney College.
All right, great. Thank you and welcome. So I'm Nikki Gonzalez-Yuan. I was just elected vice president of the board. I've served on the Peralta board along with Trustee Withrow for 16 years now. Isn't that right, Bill?
Yes.
Just elected to a 5th term. I think our most senior member is Trustee Handy, and unfortunately she's not here tonight. And in my other life, I am a full-time political science instructor. I'm the chair of the political science department at Laney College in Cupertino. I live in Berkeley and represent most of the city of Berkeley, a little slice of Oakland and all of Albany. So I'm glad to be here tonight.
Thank you. President Reese, do you want to give it a little context? Are you good or you good? Okay. Past President Bonilla.
Hi, student trustee Yuri. Welcome. And I am Trustee Bonilla, and I've just finished my term as past board president. So welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Trustee Withrow.
Bill Withrow, as Trustee Ewan said, 16 years on the board. I've been an elected official in various capacities for about 25 years, and I'm a career regular retired naval officer and business guy. So when I look at things, I have a business kind of a focus. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Trustee Visro.
Trustee Jenkins?
Welcome, student trustee Yuru. I'm Trustee Jenkins. This is, I'm one of the newer members on the board with Trustee Polk. I represent Oakland, from the San Leandro Oakland border to Seminary Avenue. I'm really excited to have you and your viewpoints, your thoughts. Excited to work with you. I'm ready to get started.
Great, thank you. And Trustee Delphine Polk.
Yes, hi, I'm Deanna Delphine Polk. I am representing Area 6, which is the other part of Berkeley, which is like kind of the North Berkeley Hills. I live in a neighborhood called Northside, which is 3 blocks north of the Cal campus. And I also represent North Oakland down to Joaquin Miller Park. My background in my other life, I'm the Associate Executive Director of a violence prevention nonprofit in San Francisco called HOMI, and we work with street identified Black and Brown youth in San Francisco's Mission District. I'm an organizer by trade. I've spent the last few decades of my life organizing in political arenas, community spaces, mostly around anti-gentrification efforts, and advocating for Latinx students. And so I'm really excited to be here. I'm a community college graduate myself. I graduated from Merced College in 2006. Transferred to UC Berkeley. I have a degree in public policy from Mills College. And so student participation is a really important thing for me. And so I'm really excited to work with you. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to introduce Natasha Sawhney. She's our legal counsel. I don't know if she wants to say a few words. Okay.
Hi. Thanks. Welcome. Terrific to have you. Excited to support your leadership on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sawhney.
And then, of course, you're being introduced as we speak to Dr. Benjamin, but I just want to also make a note here that because you are not sworn in, you're not really able to vote or participate so much in the meeting. You're mostly here as an observer. But having said that, when you are sworn in, you might wish you had this status. So there'll be a lot for you to vote on and to participate in as we're going forward. So, and of course we have Maisha Jameson, who is our board clerk. We couldn't have this meeting or any of the other ones without her. So Maisha, would you like to say anything?
Sure. Hi, Yuru. Yes, we've been in communication. Welcome. Very glad to have you. I am currently working as the board clerk, and yeah, I've worked at Laney College as the executive assistant to the president there, and am working in this capacity for at least a while. So yeah, so it's good to meet you and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson.
All right. So with that, Dr. Benjamin, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I got a little carried away. Sorry, I was just getting down to the business. So the context, I guess, for all this talking I've been doing about the board and how it operates, I came in as a facilitator for the board earlier this year. So this is, I guess, maybe April, May, something like that. And the board needed some assistance in several areas. One was in establishing goals for itself and in evaluating itself. And that's where the focus has been. And the establishment of goals and the self-evaluation led us to the point where we are tonight, that the board needs to work on making itself more cohesive. And all of these are self-identified issues by the board. And it's an outgrowth of the responses they gave in the self-evaluation, which then showed up in the goals. And now we're working through those goals to resolve some of the issues. So that's how we got here. And we decided that it would be best, the way we were moving along and having to get an acting chancellor, and then an interim chancellor, and then a board change to really start on this work in earnest at this point when the new board members join, to see what the outcome of the election would be. Hence this meeting tonight and trying to get some of this work done before the year ends. So to continue, my idea for the way to handle this was to have you think aspirationally. And that's the purpose of a vision statement. The statement is what it is to which you aspire. If you're working at your A+ level, what does that look like? And so for the benefit of people who may be joining us, I sent a one-way communication to the board in which they had to complete an exercise on writing a personal vision statement. And so tonight we are going to take about 20 minutes, unless they think they need more, divide the board into 2 groups of 3 each, and they will have copies of their and each other's personal vision statements. And in the 20 or so minutes that they'll have, they'll come up with one statement. So we'll be offline for about 20, 25 minutes for the board to work on those statements in 2 groups, and then they'll come back. So let me ask you though, before you leave the room, this room, if you think you need more than 20 minutes, you know what the assignment is and you've already looked at the statements. So do you think you need more than 20 minutes to do the work? Or will 20 minutes do? Okay, so we have an interesting dilemma. Okay, Trustee Napoli-Reese.
You're on mute.
Dr. Benjamin, I'm just looking at the vision statements, and I don't think we have one for everyone. So what we want to do when we get into our groups is we want to actually look at each other's vision statements, right? And I don't believe in this paper that I'm looking at that we have a vision statement for every single individual.
I think you have 6.
We don't have Trustee Delphine Polk's on here.
Oh no.
I didn't receive.
I emailed that in. Okay, I can send you a copy.
Yeah,
Sorry, guys.
So the ones that I gave you are the ones I received after calling and writing and all that. So
Okay, I emailed it in. I thought before. Okay.
Deanna,
well,
could
you could have mailed it to me, Trustee Polk, and I could have missed it. So if you,
Deanna, could you paste just that part, the vision statement, into the chat at least?
Good
For
idea.
starters, and you,
Sure.
if you have one, I don't know whether you got the exercise, that'd be great.
yeah, everybody should have the exercise. It's in your agenda as well. I sent it to you separately and it's in your agenda. So Trustee Polk, do you have a copy of yours with you? Can you paste it in
Yes,
the chat?
I will. I'll find it. Yeah.
Well, we need you to do it now because
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
because we're doing a webinar and not Zoom. Maisha had to do some research today on how we could do this. So while Trustee Polk is looking for hers, would you give us those instructions, please, Ms. Jameson?
Yes, ma'am. So we found out that you cannot do breakout rooms on webinars. Zoom webinars, they're for regular meetings. Webinars are usually used for, one face going out, just relaying information. And so what I'm going to do is I'm putting in the chat right.
Maisha, you've gone on to mute for some bizarre reason. I don't know.
Really weird. I didn't push that. Okay, so I'm not sure when that happened, but I put into the chat a link to a regular Zoom meeting that I'm going to be manning from my other account. I want you to click on that link at the time when we're ready for that. When we go over to that other Zoom room, it's going to, that way I'll be allowed to put you guys into breakout rooms. So you'll be assigned into breakout rooms once everyone is there. And then in order to get us back, I will put a link into that chat, right, for you to come back. You can either use that link, and if you use the link that I put into the chat there, it will bring you back to this meeting, but it's my link. So you'll have my name, so you'll have to rename yourself. or you can just use your regular panelist link. So either or, you'll get back here. We'll just figure out how to fix it once you get back here. So any questions on what I just said? I know it's a little confusing. It was for me.
If you can put that into the chat, that would be really good too.
Sure.
So that we get lost.
So,
Look at
so
that.
Maisha,
Yes.
they'll be, the Zoom room they'll enter will shut down in 20 minutes after they get on it automatically.
I'll
Yes.
time it. I'll bring everyone back to that main room and that Zoom meeting. And you'll be able to click the link in the chat in that Zoom meeting to bring you back here. Just like we're doing here. So there's a link here that I just put, link for breakout room. Click that link, it'll take you to another Zoom meeting, and we'll come together there, and I'll then move you guys over into breakout room.
Okay, and I just put my vision statement in the chat, and I'm happy to repost it
Okay.
or
Thank
email
you
it to whoever
so
needs it. Yeah.
much. And I'm
I don't know why
sorry
it didn't
that-
make it to you, Dr. Benjamin. I apologize about that.
And you might have, so I'm taking, let's do 50-50 on the responsibility.
And
Okay.
I have a question. Given that we have 3 trustees per room, we only have 2 rooms. Should we have the student trustee wait here with me until you get back?
And you and Dr. Walter.
Right.
Yes.
You could take a quick break, Yuru, and turn off your camera, relax a bit.
Hang on, are we suggesting not to have our student trustee helping do a vision statement?
I don't know the extent that she can participate. I don't,
So
Dr. Walter.
she's
I'm
here,
one advocate
Trustee
for full
Gonzalez.
participation.
Trustee Gonzalez.
Yes.
So our student trustee is here as an observer today, not an active participant. And so we welcome her in that capacity until we can swear her in.
So,
All right, I don't think that makes a lot of sense, but if that's the way that it's been designed, I will not mess with the designers and leaders of the planning. So continue, please.
okay, thank you. And congratulations on your vice presidency. So trustees Jenkins, Napoli, Reese, you have to help me with the pronunciation of your name, Cindy. And Bonilla will be in one group. Trustees Winthrow, Polk, and Gonzalez-Yen will be in the other. Now, there's one other direction we need to give you. Once you have settled on your vision statement, we need you to send it to Maisha. One of you to send it to Maisha. And then one of you to be a spokesperson when you come back to talk about your vision statement. Is everybody ready?
Is that for each group?
Yes, for each group.
Okay.
Is everybody ready?
It's ready.
Any questions? You got everything all straightened out? Okay. So go into Zoom.
Maisha, you're on mute if you're trying to speak.
Sorry, you'll need to click on that link to go into that Zoom.
Yeah, you have to click on the link that's in the chat box.
What do I get? It says leave and join.
Yes, that's right. Go for it.
All right.
Bye.
I don't know what mine is doing.
All right, looks like we're getting some success here because people are disappearing. Gonzalez UN, you are on mute. Nope. Trustee UN, we shouldn't see you if you've moved over to the other room.
I'm over in
Play
that
with
other
you.
room, but I've just got 2 Zooms open, so I'm good.
Okay, all right, got it. All right, perfect. Thank you.
You pulled it off. All right. Is this being televised?
I think it's being recorded so it can be televised. I don't think it's, I have to check with Mark, but
It's not live.
I don't think it's live, but
All
I
right, so
can't
we
read.
pulled it off, Natasha.
Very good. Very good.
So if it were live, Natasha,
Mhm.
people would just have to wait until they came back, right?
Correct. Yeah, the research that we completed is like it's the same as doing an ad hoc. Right?
Yeah,
So
I was thinking,
basically-
but I just was thinking that because it was in a board meeting, there might be a problem. But it makes sense that it's not.
Yeah, if this is going to be later televised, we probably won't talk about the legal advice in the meeting.
Will this part be televised while they're gone? Can we cut this part out? This is not part of the meeting.
It's still recording, so I
yeah.
don't think we can stop the recording. You just
Okay.
want to be mindful that this is a public meeting.
Yeah, and this is akin, the breakout rooms are akin to an ad hoc.
Uh-huh. Without a majority.
Without a majority, right? And if we were doing it in person in the board workroom where we do all of the board meetings, you would
Right.
do this, right? And the public would
Yeah,
watch them.
people would be observing.
They would do and they've done this multiple times in other workshops where they've had to get together in groups and do different
Yeah.
activities. So it's just Zoom is intended to allow the district to continue its business as though it was meeting in person while we
Right. And so I wanted to do this in another district and I talked myself out of it. And then I thought I'd talk to you. So it makes sense. Makes sense.
Chancellor, I'm going to give you a call a bit later. I have a couple updates.
You can call me now if you want. Put yourself on mute.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay,
Yeah, save some time.
that's right.
I'm
Okay,
going to call you now.
okay. I'm still gonna watch the screen so I'll know when people come back, okay?
Okay, so everyone has been placed in their breakout rooms and I set the timer. So I'll bring them back in shortly.
Okay, and you could set the timer so that when I've done breakout rooms before, after whatever number of minutes they gave us, it just shuts off and you shut down.
Mm-hmm.
think I'm there.
There you go.
Takes me a little bit longer to do this.
We thought we were going to be done in 5 minutes.
We so didn't even begin working.
Gave you the opportunity. I knew you needed more time, but no.
No, but that's all
Wait a
right.
minute, how do I change my name so that everybody isn't May?
Oh, go to participants, Bill. Go to participants on the
Participants.
bottom. And then go
Okay.
to.
You can go up here,
you don't
your,
know-
the
Yeah,
three
look at-
I
dots.
can just rename everyone. I can just rename.
Bill, on the top right of your little square, you got three dots. Click on those. The fourth option down says rename.
Oh, that's easier. Okay.
Madam
Right next to
President,
your
do you
mute
want more
button.
time?
No, I
I'm
think
having a hard time getting back my.
The three dots.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's.
Why don't you just use.
That's all right. I don't care about it.
Sorry, some feedback. Use the link that you.
'Cause I don't see it working.
Regular.
Oh, good.
And just,
Okay,
just
I'm gonna
lock-
get out of here.
shut this one down and get back into that one. I'm gonna end this one now, Trustee Gonzalez.
Somehow, when I go over to that other one, I'm able to leave this window open. So I'm
There we
able to
go.
be in two
Thank you.
Zoom.
the audio that echoes, it's a bit difficult to deal with because you have to sign out of one audio, right?
Yeah.
In order to make sure that the other is not echoing somehow.
Helen, the reason that we didn't end up crafting language was that we ended up spending the time, the three of us, talking about what we thought the function of a board was.
No, I think it's because we're the A team and you guys just didn't do your work.
So you guys don't have a sentence?
We do, hold on. Whoa.
No, the other guys.
No,
No,
we didn't craft a sentence yet. It's
We
really
had a very
coming,
meaningful
though.
discussion.
Yeah,
That's good. That's good.
Bill finally agreed that I was right all these years.
Oh,
Clearly something is wrong with Bill.
well, I do want, if each of you though could just give us a sentence,
Okay.
and you guys have a hard time with a sentence, but the three of you who don't have a vision statement of what the function, what you see as the function of a board.
yeah, well, Nikki has a vision statement and I've got a vision statement. And Ms.
Well,
Polk
all
has a
three of you
vision
have one.
statement. I don't see it, but she
I had
does.
it in the chat, but I can put
How
it in
about
the
this?
chat
You know
again.
what we did? Can I go ahead and interject with we did because we were so productive in our group. We were so
Everybody
very
back.
serious.
Hold on a second. We'll have a discussion. I'm not gonna rush us through this. It's too important. So is everybody back, Maisha? 6, we have 6, right? Oh,
Yes, everybody's back.
all right, we're ready. So,
We took everybody's and went through it. We wordsmithed it based on everyone's input. So all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trustees. Now, what we ended up with at the end was really, we just lifted, just messy. We lifted all the pieces that we loved about everyone's statement
oh, good.
and then turned it into a non-comprehensible sentence. And then we spent the entire 15 minutes wordsmithing it to make it sound like something.
Okay. Did they send it to you, Maisha?
And Maisha is getting it right now.
Okay.
Vision.
Sorry, President Reese. We talked the whole time.
Now we know not to put together. Oh, Maisha, why are you a no reply to a Zoom? Oh my gosh, you got the wrong email in here.
I did get your email.
You just got it?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Said you were a Zoom person.
Go with it. But, let's see here. I'll put it in the chat. Or I can either do that or I'll do this. It's in the chat. And I'll also share my screen.
You can't put Cindy and I together in a Zoom. We're intense. We start working and then Jenkins was just as intense. And so we just had 3 intense people working on a sentence.
Yeah. Oh,
Bill and Deanna, look at what I've just pasted in there and tell me if you think that that represents an outcome that from our discussion.
Shared goals and ensure that procedures and practice. Am I reading the one that you?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's fine.
All right.
we got
So
somewhere. We weren't so sloppy.
excellent, excellent.
Yeah, I told you,
So
Bill
why
changed
don't
his mind.
we-
He agreed that I've been right all these years, you see.
So, trustees Jenkins, Reese, and Bonilla, you've told us about our process. Do you want to say anything else about it and then read your statement to us with passion?
Oh, that's going to be Trustee Kevin Jenkins' job to read with passion.
Go ahead.
Any more statements?
No, that's your one. Read your one statement because you
Okay.
guys are going to vote on which one is better.
And it's right here where Maisha posted it.
Yes, the first one I think is yours.
The Peralta Board is dedicated to educational excellence by fostering and supporting each student's academic goals, professional environment, professional aspirations, and individual dreams in an environment where all are respected, honored, and where they dare to dream.
Ooh.
I like that.
That's very good.
Yeah, I like that.
Dare to dream.
Dare to dream. Okay. The next group, a passionate read of it, please.
Go ahead, Nikki.
Well, I'll read it, and I can see that the part that's missing from it is the specific mention of education and students, but
That's
it's
right.
implied in the
Yeah.
question about common values and visions. So
Yeah.
we just didn't get there yet. The Peralta Board should faithfully represent the common values and visions of their respective communities in regard to blah, blah, blah. Establish shared goals and ensure that procedures and practices are consistent with and supportive of legal mandates, board and district policies, and establish norms of respect, cooperation, and civility.
Okay. Reactions to those two? This is it's not where you are right now, but it's what you're aiming for. If you're at your very best, you're doing what's in these statements.
So it's interesting because when we look at those two statements, one is about what we should be doing, dedicated to educational excellence, and the other is what we should be as a board, right? So the Peralta Board should be, and then the other statement is the Peralta Board should do this. And so in terms of our vision statement, what do we want? Do we want it to be about what we are going to be or what we are going to do? Maybe they should be the same.
That's for you guys.
That's a good point.
It's to what you aspire. And what I want to happen, I want you to make a decision tonight about one of these. Maisha, we've set up a way for them to poll, is that correct? And you have to choose one of these statements that you would like to have. And you can, I can assign somebody, a couple of you to work on it to fine tune it a little bit, and we can talk about it a little more after you choose one. But you're going to choose one that you think is the better one. and that articulates best to what you aspire, what your vision is for yourselves as a board.
So I've done just a teeny bit of recrafting of the
Sure.
statement
Okay.
out of our group. And again, you know, those are my words, but I think I really was trying to represent our discussion and really looking for commonality. I'm joking around about, you know, the disagreements. Really what we were trying to focus on was, where do we agree?
Right. And so if the other two agree with whatever you put up, then we'll accept that and have it as an option. So you can act for a minute as though we're not here, the three of you.
Deanna, Bill, are you comfortable with I added in this piece around student and community aspirations for their lives and the society as a whole.
That make it, yeah, no. We should have something in there having to do with students, since it's the name of the game. That's what we're here for.
So Maisha, you want to pick that up?
So it won't let me copy, which is, can you email that to me,
Yeah.
Nikki?
I don't know why that function, the copy function, has been kind of messed with.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It's going to take me a second.
Okay.
To just send it over. I just sent it.
Okay.
Can I, while we're hanging out, can I kind of jump in on these two?
Oh, certainly.
So part of where we started our discussion is what is in fact the role of the board. It's like, as an institution, I would agree, you know, with the first statement, you know, we as an institution, we're trying to foster and support student academic goals, et cetera. But what is the role of the board specifically? And that's where, you know, I think about sort of democratic theory and like, what's the role of elections? And each of us is elected and really is the only place in the district where residents, members of the community, get to hold the district accountable. How do they do that? They either elect us or they defeat us. They throw us out of office or they elect somebody else or they put us back in office. And so we represent that. We have that role. And, you know, I think the one area where Deanna and Bill and I absolutely agreed is that we set policy, and that policy should then be reflective of our community's values. We're the embodiment of that. We're where the buck stops in that regard. And I think that is the specific role of a board. We then have the institution, through the chancellor, do the things that get us to that vision, to, you know, fulfill that policy. But then we have an additional role, and that is to make sure that rules and processes are followed. You know, people come to us and say, the chancellor comes to us and says, vote on this thing. And one of the questions we can always ask is, was there due process here? Was there a process that everybody would agree, yeah, those norms were followed? And the reason that's important is that if those norms weren't followed and you end up with a crummy outcome, you don't know why you got that outcome, because it happened in some haphazard manner. If you followed the processes and you didn't get the outcome you wanted, then maybe it's that the outcome was a crappy outcome. and nobody wanted to go along with it. But it's very likely that if you followed the processes, you didn't get to the outcome, then your process is broken. And so that's
Yeah.
where, Bill is always talking about accountability, and he and I think, completely agree on this. If we are going to, as a board, have the role of holding accountability, well, we need to actually have some norms that we've all followed.
I would offer a friendly amendment to your first line and make should faithfully represents, and take out the should, because it's not, because you're talking about what you aspire to, what you do, not what you should do, but what you're doing if you are at that maximum level.
Sure. I'm totally good with that. It's just, we're not there. And so it's like, what's our vision of where we should be?
Right. No, that's the point. You're not there, but that's your beacon.
Okay.
That's what you're aiming for. In every action you take, you are aspiring to what you say in the statement you choose.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments about the statements? All right. So for statement number 1, do you guys have any more comments about your statement? You want to sell? Okay, so we're going to poll you right now. So Maisha, we're ready. Look at those. Have you decided which one you prefer individually? So
Before we go there really quickly,
let's go back again, Maisha.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I should have spoken.
No rush.
I just kind of feel like there is a part of both statements that should be potentially integrated into the vision statement. So I think that we absolutely have to put students and the educational excellence. So I think our statement 1 is still very, very good and important. But I think that somewhere in there, and I don't know if there should be a 2-sentence vision statement or make it an incredibly long statement, that somehow I'm more interested, and this is just me personally, that this latter portion of statement 2 is a little bit in there, because we do need to talk about our procedures and practices, and they need to be consistent, and then establish norms of respect and cooperation and civility. Those are still aspirational. And so I think that those in a concretized statement allows us, as you were saying, our kind of North Star, if it's part of our vision.
Right. So why don't we do this? Let's do the incorporating after we choose.
Okay.
All right. So let's just decide on which one you favor, because I think you probably both like them. There are good things in both. And then if we want to take something from the one we didn't choose, then we can do that. All right. You ready? They're ready, Maisha. You want to give us suggestions? I think it's pretty simple. Directions, I mean. So they just click on the one they prefer, Maisha, and then press submit, right?
Submit.
Maya, you're muted.
Sorry, that's right. And it's already calculating. I see some of you guys have already submitted. Okay.
You want to show us the results? Don't tell me it's a tie.
It's obviously going to do that.
Wait, did everybody
Democracy
vote
for
for their
real.
own?
We need a tiebreaker. Where's that student trustee?
Well, what's nice about this is that we obviously, as a group, like key elements of both.
Yeah. So now, so Cindy, we're going to go back to what you said. We were going to do it before. So let's look at both of them. It looks as though you have a compromise, Cindy, a recommendation for combining these two. So put them back up, Maisha, if you don't mind, and be ready to move stuff. And I think if you have 2 sentences, okay. I prefer 1, but if you have 2, it's fine.
Could somebody from group statement 1 just talk about the statement? What are the things? How do you think about what you've written here? Just bring that to life a little bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, Well, I already started out, so you already have the context. So I'll let the other two weigh in, Cindy and Kevin.
Kevin, go for it.
One second, I stepped away to use the restroom. What did I miss?
You're supposed to be talking about statement number 1.
What do you like about the statement that you all came up with? What are the elements that were meaningful for you? So that, yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish your statement, please.
Now,
So in envisioning what our district looks like, students, and making sure that we have a holistic student, making sure that it's not just academics, their professional and individual dreams. And dreams was really important for us. It's bold, it stands out, and it makes it to where the statement is not your normal stuffy vision statement. And then all the things that our district wants to be. It's about respect, it's about honor, and capturing all of that in this statement while creating holistic student.
Yeah, and I would say for me, I think that having a vision statement that actually puts these particular items as our objective or as our goal helps us remember that every single decision we make has to be centered around the students in every possible way. And so that is, I think that we are going to be judged by our actions, by what we do. And I know that our board needs to be a particular way, but we also have to ensure that our actions are always with the students at the center. And so that's why for me, this kind of how we act, what we do, and what we want as a result of it, sans any kind of dysfunctionalities or all, that is what's particularly illuminated for me.
if I can jump back in.
Okay.
Aisha, did you have a comment before?
I've kind of wordsmithed and combined a bit. Whenever you guys are ready to see that, or if you want to see that.
Nikki, you want to finish your comment before we go to Maisha's suggestion for you?
Yeah. So I really love the idea of thinking about, what does each student want? And the challenge that I have with the language as it's articulated.
Let's see both statements, Maisha.
Is that students don't necessarily have, in the community college system historically, we've had a big mission. We've had transfer level education, we'd have basic skills, we have lifelong learning, we have career technical. And I think that what I like about that part of the statement is that it begins to articulate some of those things. But I think also as board members, it's not just the individual student that we're thinking about. The part of our role is to have a bigger vision of, well, what are we doing as a community? In addition to supporting individual students, what is the role of our community college in shaping the welfare of the community? So for example, the Restoring Our Communities initiative at Laney College, sure, it's about those individual students, but it's also a vision of restorative justice for an entire community. And so they're, or like the environmental controls technology program. Yes, it's about trades, but it's also about establishing norms of environmental sustainability and resilience. And that, I think that is the role that faculty and staff and students often play in these collective ways. And I think that as representatives of our communities, we need that vision as well. So that, the first statement focuses a little too much on the individual student and not
I
on.
don't think I hate to interrupt you, but I don't think you could ever focus too much on the student.
Well, I'm not disagreeing.
Okay,
I'm just saying there isn't enough emphasis on the broader, collective vision.
okay.
That's all.
So let's
You know,
start the
there-
wordsmithing
I'd
then.
like to chime in a little bit here because there's some good points that have come out on for both of these. One, you talk about lifelong learning. To me, going through post-secondary education, any kind of an education, but certainly post-secondary education, you're learning how to learn because you never stop. You never stop. Complete. Oh, I'm done. That's it. It's a process where you're learning the basis to continue to learn, to adapt, and to formulate. The other thing has to do with the community. And one of the areas that we as a institution come under criticism from the Aspen Institute was that we don't focus enough on the skill sets needed for various occupational categories in our particular community. We don't do that. We don't focus on career awareness, if you will, although a couple things. But to me, those two things need to be added in some fashion to both the student one and statement one and statement two.
And what are those two things again, Bill?
Well, one is the lifelong learning. In other words, setting the stage and inspiring our students to learn how to learn, how to effectively,
Okay,
and how to, and that's number one. Number two, getting into the feed up, doing for the community, benefiting the community, feeding the community, has to do with career awareness. And we don't do that. And we don't really look at our community and in terms of what is needed here. What are the skill sets that are needed so that our students, when they go into there, are going to benefit the community? What are the shortfalls in the community that we need to augment?
okay, I want to rush us along. Amaisha, I'm going to let you wait on your recommendation to see what the board's going to do here. So Cindy, do you have something for us?
Well, something for us in terms of how to
Combining the two. I thought you had thought about it a bit.
Oh, no, actually what I was doing was I was looking at the 4 other colleges to find out what their mission statements are, because a point well taken is that, at the board level, what is it that we are supposed to be doing? And I think that we can still individually think about each student, but at the same time, we also are supporting the college's own mission statements, right? And so I don't want to go away from the each student, because I think that that's definitely important. Or if it's better, we could say supporting students. So that's more of the collective. But the mission statements of each of the 4 colleges they're far more specific in what they're going to be doing in their respective colleges. So I think what you were trying to say, Nikki, earlier was that what are we doing kind of at this macro level? But at the macro level, it still has to be about the student. I still believe that completely. But I would, again, bring in something from statement number 2. So let me think about that for a second.
Okay, anybody else have something you want to offer? All right, it is 6:33 and we're 3 minutes into our break. So if you would return at 6:45 so we can get started, we'll spend 15 more minutes. And if we don't get it done in 15 minutes, we're going on to the next piece. 6:45, please return. So Maisha,
(6:45).
yes. So Maisha, if you're there, would you take the statement down for a minute so I can see everybody? And Madam President, I have a suggestion because I don't want us to get too far off the schedule, if we can help it. Oh, Trustee Reese, I have a suggestion. I would like for each person, our student has indicated in the chat that she is particularly drawn to the words in the statement 1, students dare to dream. She particularly likes that. What I would like is for each person, just quickly, to look through those statements and pick a couple of words or phrases that you want to see in the statement. And then, Madam President, if you agree, we can have 2 people work on this between today and tomorrow, since we have to meet again, or 1 person, whatever you decide, or volunteers, to take what people choose and then come back to us with the recommendation tomorrow night. Does that work? You're muted.
Yes, that sounds
All right.
good.
So would you pick the words you can't live without in the vision, please? Be ready. I'll just call on each of you as you appear on the screen. And then I'll ask for 2 volunteers. All right.
Do we want to put it back on the screen?
Yes, we do want to put it back on the screen. So I'll start with the student trustee. You want to stick with the words you put in the chat?
Yes, because can I comment on the 2 statements, even I'm an observer? Yeah, because I feel like personally, the statement 1 is really directly related to our as a students, because it says supporting each student. I can feel the board is actually care on us as students. But also I like the idea about statement 2, like how our colleges is focused on the community and even beyond, and also the society. So I also agree with the idea, like how we can like combine these 2 statements. But if,
Okay.
yeah.
So if you had to choose a couple of words or phrases that you would like to see in the statement, what would those words or that phrase be?
I want to stick to my original one, dare to dream.
Dare to dream. Okay, thank you. And I just want to read for you quickly the mission statement for the district. And I noticed a while ago that you guys don't have at least I haven't seen it, I don't want to say that, a vision statement for the district. And I know you're looking at your strategic planning, and maybe somebody will think about that because that's important. But this is, I think, a really good mission statement. It says together for the whole district, I think this is right. We provide educational leadership for the East Bay, delivering programs and services that sustainably enhance the region's human, economic, environmental, and social development. We empower our students to achieve their highest aspirations. We develop leaders who create opportunities and transform lives. That's your district mission.
I'd like to make a point on that, and thank you for bringing that up. It seemed to me that during our break, I was cogitating over what we've got here. Aren't we kind of mixing in the mission statement with the board? In other words, a lot of the things that both 1 and 2 we're talking about should be incorporated into the mission statement, with a board making reference to carrying out, supporting, facilitating, whatever the mission of the institution.
Well, we're talking about you as a board and how you behave, and you have to think about what your role is, what you're elected to do. And so how are you going to do that? What kind of board are you going to be so that you can get these things done? Because the thing we're going to do in a few minutes is what behavior you're going to exhibit so that you ensure that you reach this aspiration you've established for yourself in the way you want to function as a board. To what do you aspire in terms of your functioning as a board?
That's the bottom line of my point. That's exactly what I'm getting at here. It's the behavior and what the board does, not the mission of the institution.
Not the mission of the institution, not at all. It's what you aspire to as a board. All right, I don't want to have any more discussion because this is such a good topic, and I know we could talk about it for a really, really long time. And I know these are the discussions you long for. So Bill, what words or phrase could you not live without in these 2 statements?
Eliminate, you mean?
No, keep.
Oh, keep.
Keep.
The Peralta Board is dedicated to educational excellence. That to me is saying that we want to support the mission. That's a mission of the organization.
Is that what you want to keep?
I want to keep that.
All right, I'm at you, Nikki.
I think it's the first sentence in statement 2. It's the faithfully represents the common values. I actually just redrafted that. I put it in the chat, but
No. You can't redraft anymore. Just pick your, it's gonna be redrafted. So just pick your words. Pick your words, Nikki.
So to faithfully represent the common values, visions, and dreams of their respective communities.
Okay, thank you very much. We're at you, Trustee Reeves.
Okay, so for statement 1, I think the 3 words, sorry, that are important to me are excellence, so educational excellence, and supporting, and environment.
Okay.
Environment and supporting and educational excellence. Okay, and then for 2, I think the 3 words that are important to me are community or communities, the number of places where it shows up, policies, and civility or respect.
Okay. All right, thank you. Trustee Bonilla.
Yeah, they took all my favorite stuff.
You can go double. Put them in bold if you want to use the same words, that's fine.
It's okay. Ensure that procedures and practices are consistent.
Okay.
And I'm supposed to pick some words too?
No, you don't have to. That's what you would want to see in the statement.
Okay, I'm good.
You're good. Trustee Polk, followed by Trustee Jenkins.
I'd say academic goals, professional aspirations, and individual dreams. That's my
Okay.
phrase. Because
Okay,
everyone took mine too. my first one.
all right. And then trustee Jenkins?
I would just add students and then where all are respected.
Okay. Now I need a volunteer or 2 volunteers to take this and fashion it into a vision statement to be presented tomorrow. Is there a volunteer?
Can we volunteer people?
Yeah, volunteer people. That's a good idea. Past president, can you volunteer 2 people?
This is not a hard assignment.
It's not, but I want other people to have some fun doing it. Come on, new trustees, you can do it.
I had a feeling it was going there. I had a feeling they were going to try. But
Me too.
I think we should go with the leadership on the board and the elder states people on the board.
Oh, we do too much already. We'll put it on YouTube.
All right,
Well-
challenge accepted.
Okay, the 2 of you will do, trustees Jenkins and Polk?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And can I just
Okay.
clarify, Dr. Benjamin, can I just clarify what you had said to Trustee Withrow? So what we really are looking for is a vision statement for the board and how the board wants to act with.
Yes.
Okay, so how we want to act as a collective board, because I think that changes our understanding a little bit of what should be.
Yeah, and I'll send you the definition of a mission statement when this is over. I'll just send it to everybody, especially to Jenkins and Polk, so you can see that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So now we have some idea to what it is you aspire, okay? And now we're going to talk about, come up with a list of behaviors or actions you should exhibit, because you see where I'm trying to get here. If you are to reach this aspirational goal, if you are to achieve this vision. So before we start making the list though, I want us to look at your code of ethics, because in the retreat outcomes, some of the feedback I got from you was agreement on norms of civility and at the board level. And your code of ethics, your board code of ethics has all of this in it. And I want to recommend to you that annually in December, when you elect your officers, I might have said this in another meeting, but I think you need to make it a practice. You should review this code of ethics because it is your policy and it outlines in here how you are supposed to conduct yourselves. So before we start making this list, I want us to just walk through this. If I'm not mistaken, we're going to go through the accreditation standard on board effectiveness. And I think there's a requirement in there where you're supposed to review this code of ethics. If you put this on your agenda every December, it just happens automatically. So if you look at this first paragraph, I know that you don't want to be read to, but I'm going to do it. The board maintains high standards of ethical conduct for its members as evidenced by the adoption of this and all the other board policies. As the public's representatives, trustees must practice the highest ethical standards in performing their sworn duties. The activities and deliberations of the board will be conducted following these tenets. And so all these tenets are listed, and I'm not going to read every single thing here, but acting as a whole. And if we look back at that self-evaluation, one of the things that was recommended by one of the persons completing the survey was that the board abide by decisions that are made and not talk about things that have already been passed after the meeting is over. That's not acting as a whole. It says here that if you act as a whole, you recognize that legal and effective functioning is as a whole. And of course, you're going to disagree on things. Of course you are. You're going to have a lot of 4-3 votes, 5-2 votes, 6-1 votes. And then there are going to be some unanimous votes. Whether it's a 6-1 or unanimous, the behavior when it's over should be the same. You act as a whole, you move forward. You lost that one. It's done, it passed, move on. The next one, managing conflicts of interest. This was one of the areas where you rated yourself very high. If you look at the, and we're gonna look at that in the accreditation standards in a minute. There does not appear to be anyone on the board who has a conflict. Nobody complained about it. You're very good on that one. Handling special interest groups. Board members render all decisions regarding the issues at hand based on the available facts and their independent judgments and refuse to surrender that judgment to individuals or special interest groups. At the same time, district employees, their representatives, students, and all members of the public are encouraged to express their views to the board. And because often you hear, well, you shouldn't listen to, the different viewpoints and all of that. And of course, you're an elected official. You listen to people. That's your job. You don't have to act on everything they say, because then you're not acting as a whole. You're out there operating like a cowboy. But you have to handle that with care. Maintaining appropriate conduct at board meetings. And I did ask you to watch, I think your December 8th meeting. There were some interesting things going on in that meeting. It says here in your policy that board members contribute to board meetings in a way that facilitates thoughtful deliberation, good decision-making, and the effective use of time available. They participate actively and constructively, stay focused on the business at hand, avoid conduct that is disruptive, and treat everyone who interacts with the board with respect. Board members meet only in public sessions unless authorized by law to meet in closed session. So this is about thoughtful deliberation. I mean, the discussion we had just now about your vision, I think is an example of thoughtful deliberation and taking your time to talk about things that are meaningful and not disagreeing with people, but not attacking. And that's one of the things that came up in the outcomes. Maintaining confidentiality of closed sessions came up in the survey that some people feel there's a problem with that. No matter what it is, you keep it in the group. Exercising authority as trustees, respect their elected position as trustees. And I think Nikki said something about the community electing you, and the only way you can be quote unquote unelected is by them. And no way should you misuse your authority. And there's so many opportunities to misuse your authority. And you just have to be mindful of that. And how, I just know how I've seen how individuals change toward a board member, especially one who's newly elected and never been a board member before, because the board member, the person then is no longer just a citizen. It's a person with authority, with influence. And people will approach the person. There's power there, and you just have to be careful with how you use that power and that authority, and that it should always be for good and never called into question. This says that you commit the time and the energy necessary to discharge your duties. You strive to promote the highest quality educational opportunities for all members. And then handling of administrative matters in your policy. You focus board attention on policy determination, planning, and the maintenance of the district's fiscal stability. That's key. Board members refrain from involving themselves in matters that are delegated to the chancellor. I know how hard that is to do, but that is what you're supposed to do, except as needed to fulfill their proper overall evaluation responsibilities. Being chancellor is not your job. Allegations, so here we go. So somewhere in here, in the retreat outcome, someone said, something about veering from the topic. a way to handle when people don't, what do we do if people don't follow this code and act in ways that violate it? Board members focus board attention. I read that one. Allegations of violations of this code shall be directed to the president of the board or the vice president if the president's behavior is in question. And this is like, this one always reminds me of when a faculty member becomes a dean, how challenging that can be for the dean, because the dean has been a peer, and then all of a sudden, the dean is now the dean, and people who were the peers now report to that person. That's kind of the president in. The president has been a peer. The president is the one who has to resolve all these issues or be involved in the resolution of them. But that's what the rule, and this is a CCC recommendation. Every community college, I think, in the state of California uses this same method. The president will first discuss the violation with the board member to reach a resolution. And this is not the chancellor's job. It's not the chancellor's job. The chancellor reports to you and not vice versa. The chancellor should not be trying to resolve issues between and among board members. That's not that person's job. All that person does when he or she does that, is to get him or herself in a whole lot of trouble. It just backfires. Board members handle board members' problems. That's how it works. Anyway, so that's all you have written, as far as I know, in terms of resolving issues. So I just wanted to review that to let you know what you have, and especially for the benefit of the new people, especially for new people when you come in. We have more rules and regulations regulating us than probably anybody. We got so much in the ed code and just a lot. There's just a lot to know. And you can see we have a policy that governs just about every single thing. So now we move with that kind of introduction to it. Let's talk about this vision you have for yourselves and what you need to do to achieve it. If you want to faithfully represent and be dedicated to educational excellence, what kind of behavior do you need to exhibit? And so I want you to come up, if you can, with a list of maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 things. And we're going to go through those things and ask you to commit. We will take everything off the list. If one person says, I can't commit to that, I already know I can't do it, I'm not doing it, it won't stay on the list. There may be one thing left when we get done, or there may be other things left. But it's up to you. I mean, then you need to decide. I'm just throwing this out. Let me put it that way. And you can decide whether you want to do this or not. But it would end up being a list of commitments you're making to yourself and to each other so that you can be more cohesive and function in a highly effective way. How does that sound to you? I'm the ideal person here. Or if you have another way that we can do this, or if you think you don't need it, if you just have your code of ethics, you know what your code of ethics says, and we're going to abide by that, we don't need to come up with a separate list. Nikki.
So I don't have any difficulty with any of these elements of the code of ethics. I think the challenge for our board is that we haven't used the very last part, which is where there is a belief that a board member has violated the code of ethics, we have not gone through step 1. Board president has conversation with. So Bill, I don't want to bring up unpleasantness, but let's talk for a second about your censure motion of me 2 years ago. You thought I was violating board policy and board ethics, apparently.
That's right.
Not once did the board president ever talk to me. And I sent numerous
I think
emails
it's a very good point.
to the board president. So here was the second part of it. If a board member is never talked to, then a board member doesn't have an opportunity to respond. And so you made allegations that I had engaged in abusive behavior of staff, et cetera. And it's like, give me one piece of evidence, please, so that then we can talk about it. And then we could talk about, one, did such and such a thing ever happen? And two, did that constitute what you said it constituted? And then we could have actually a real conversation. Now,
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think
and that's why I'm suggesting that
Yes.
every December you review it so people know what the process is. You have a policy that governs that reaction. And
Well-
so in my mind, you're bound to follow it until it changes.
Okay, so here's, can I raise the second issue then around this? And, the problem here in part is that Linda isn't here. And, at one point, at many points, various members of this board have made pretty damning accusations of other members of the board. But we don't follow this process. And I think what we need is agreement that rather than in closed session or in open session, as occurred yesterday, accusations are made about the intent of particular board members in a way that I think doesn't really accord very much respect to the other board members. I think if in fact we're going to function well as a board, we need to stop doing that. End of story. But then the board president, I don't know how you're going to do this. At one point, Julina, you'll remember I came to you with a complaint about a board member who I said had used profanity, had said, fuck you, excuse me, to be real explicit, to a member of the public in open session.
Yes.
I
So-
came to you and like, hey, I've got a complaint. I think this is a violation of board civility policy.
Right. So here's what I would like to offer, because your examples, Nikki, are very clear examples of us as a board not adhering and following protocol and process that at some point in the past was agreed upon.
Yeah.
This board has not, but this board needs to. It, as a matter of fact, our not just our reputation, but our survivability as a district is dependent upon us behaving in accordance with what the protocols are. So I think if, we can't go back, unfortunately, we have I mean, for every one experience that a trustee can bring up, we can all bring up 10 more, right? And so that's not the goal of this conversation. The goal of this conversation is, because we know we have these tools, how are we going to use these tools to our benefit so that we are moving forward in the right direction? And so that's really important, right? Because this is what we've been trying to do for the past 2 years, but there's been a lot of noise. And because there's been so much noise, we haven't been able to talk about code of ethics. We haven't been able to talk about what's the appropriate channel of communication. What's the appropriate way to communicate not only with each other, but how are we communicating effectively as a 7-member board to our chancellor? I mean, there's so many pieces around this that feels like we've had starts and fits. And so I don't want to get bogged down into very specific examples. One, because that's a different type of meeting. And this meeting is understanding, how do we move this forward in the right direction? So Helen, yeah, I would defer to, and so I
Yeah,
think
and-
there's
and-
value in going through this exercise.
So Jelena, what I'm asking for in using those examples is not to relitigate those. Those are done. But can we as a group agree that if in fact any one of us has difficulty and says, look, I think so-and-so is violating the board policy, rather than it getting duked out in a closed session or an open session, that all of us will agree. The board
But that's
president-
exactly what this is, Nikki. That's
Okay,
exactly
thank
what
you.
we're.
And so I'm just explicitly calling for that. I'm totally on board with that.
Nikki,
Okay.
I agree with you, but at a lower level, I want to be at a place where if somebody's violating board policy, we don't have to go to the board president first. If you think I'm violating board policy, Nikki, I believe we should all have a board to where, Nikki, you could come to me and pull me aside. Hey, Kevin, I believe you're violating board policy. If it's not receptive, we can go to the next layer, which would be the board president. But I would hope that we could all pull each other aside and say, hey, what you're doing isn't in line with what we've agreed to.
So that's an informal way to do it. Like the policies we have within colleges is that you try to resolve whatever issue at the informal level. If it doesn't work out, then you go through the formal process. Your policy doesn't allow for a formal process. If that's something you want to do before it gets harsh, it could be difficult. Or it's up to you how you want to do it, but you can see, we just went through this code of ethics, and some of the behaviors that you have exhibited in public, in your public meetings, in your public meetings are embarrassing for the people watching. They're shameful. They're not representative of people running an educational institution. And some of it, I think it's just coming out, but some of it, I wonder about individuals' ability to see that that's inappropriate behavior. And I mean, do we need to spell out what inappropriate behavior is? Has it gone on so long that you're not even able to recognize when you're behaving inappropriately?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and I'm assuming that you can see it in other people. Can you see it in yourselves? I think everybody's guilty of it at one point or another. I've been guilty of it in my life, because sometimes you just get emotional, you lose control, whatever. But this consistency that you have in this and the reputation you have around it, it just needs to be changed if you're going to move forward and do what you need to do for students. So the decision is yours. So do you want your agreement to be that, it sounds as though you want to agree, we haven't heard from everybody, that you will follow your code of ethics? Or do you need to do a set of rules in addition to those? Or do you think the code of ethics covers everything? And the other piece of this is you have to have a board chair who is a reasonable person and who can respond appropriately, who is objective. Because sometimes, if you've been reading what's been happening in other districts with boards, they have to bring in an investigator to investigate these reported issues. So it can get serious. And I think you're at a serious level because you just watch some of your meetings.
Helen, I think actually you've raised an issue about the norm. And for those of us who've been on the board for a long time, the norm has often been pretty horrible. And, so I think in some ways we need some baseline training. For example, civility. What constitutes incivility? I was having a discussion with General Counsel, with Natasha, and at one point she pointed out to me, she said, in a professional setting, it is never appropriate to raise voice. People raise voices all the time in our board meetings. I certainly have done that. Bill, I've seen you do that. I've certainly seen Trustee Handy do that. I've seen it numerous times. And because it's been literally decades of seeing pretty abusive stuff, particularly in closed session, the norms have really just gone off the rails. And so it's not, I don't think it would be inappropriate I think it actually would be useful to go like, here's a list of what constitutes civility. And when Natasha pointed out to me, I said, well, yeah, I got frustrated and I've raised my voice. And she said, Nikki, in a professional setting, that's never appropriate. I was like, really? Because we do that all the time. It was like, okay, if that's the norm that we're going to establish, I'm good with that. If it's across the board. And I mean, I can not raise my voice, and usually I had one instance. I was pretty frustrated.
So Nikki, can I interject here for a second? Because this really is about modeling good behavior and good governance as a board, right? And so it's really interesting because I do sit on other boards and I do sit in other community partnership meetings. And for the most part, there is no yelling, there's no raising voices. There's accusations and there's, debates and discussions and people not agreeing. But for the most part, there isn't anything that I've seen happen on our board as trustees that I've witnessed anywhere else. And so that's it's draining. It's mentally, physically draining. And unfortunately, this board is so accustomed to behaving this way that to Dr. Benjamin's point, to Helen's point, you don't even recognize it. It's part of the norm. The dysfunction is part of the norm. And it's exasperating, right? It's the reason why we are, one, doing this training, two, having to respond to the state chancellor who has been watching us over the course of the past several years on demonstrating good behavior, demonstrating good trusteeship. And so if we don't get it together, we're not going to have anything to be trusteeship over, because there will not be a Peralta Community College District. It will not be in our hands. And so we need to get this together. There are norms. Emails do not fly directly from a trustee to the chancellor without CCing your board officers. Emails do not go from trustees to state chancellors without copying your board your board president, your board officer.
I want to insert one thing. They shouldn't go without the knowledge of the board president and
without the knowledge.
Everybody should know. That's the first one, acting as a whole. You don't go out as an individual and make a deal with somebody, some business or whatever, or with the state chancellor's office, or write letters, because you're part of a whole. You've got to come back to the whole and get everybody to agree with what it is you want to do. And the other thing you do, while I'm on it, look at the videos, how you treat your chancellors. You're notorious. It's not just how you treat each other.
And so,
I'm sorry, okay.
And so one of the things is our role is to protect the district, right? That's our governance fiduciary role, is to protect the district and make sure that the students are receiving exactly what we've said they're going to receive, right? And do exactly what the vision, what the mission, what the goals, all of those pieces are so important. Acting as a whole doesn't mean that we're always on the same page. It means that we've deliberated, gone through some level of discourse, and that we've settled on something either unanimously or however, you know, we've settled on an issue. There have been many times as a new trustee where my issues were, one, not raised, two, when they were raised, were voted down. And I had to live with that. I just had to live with it. I couldn't spin out. I couldn't go run to the state chancellor's office. I couldn't go banging on the chancellor's door or anyone else's door because my issue just never got, you know, I've seen people at the district who I thought were amazing, who were terminated, who were moving a particular agenda that I thought was critical to the district and to the students, and it died. It went flat. They were terminated. There wasn't a whole lot I could do about it. Maybe I could have raised a stink. Maybe I could have behaved inappropriately, but that's not how this works. That is just not how this works. So we are a different body, but I do want to help Dr. Benjamin move this forward because Nikki, you and I can't take up all the airtime.
Okay, before I call on Nikki, is there anyone else who would like to make a comment on this? What your preference is in terms of how to get a hold or get a handle on behavior and how you treat each other, how you treat your chancellor, how your public and closed session, I mean, I don't know how your closed sessions would go, but I've seen the public ones. And so do you want to agree to adhere very closely to your code of ethics? Do you want to adhere to the code of ethics and then add some more things that to which you commit? Those are the choices, and that there may be other options. Trustee Reese?
Yeah, so I'm hearing that, you know, what we want to do in this particular exercise is we want to make sure that everyone is adhering to a particular norm, particular level and standard of expectation. And I think that that's going to be particularly important because if any member, any trustee is out of line, if we have committed to this norm, it is not just the chair that is saying you're out of line, but it really is a kind of the whole board, if we are committing to this, is saying, wait a minute, this is unacceptable behavior. And so I think the actual kind of agreeing and committing is very important.
Holding each other accountable as well as it being your job as president.
Right. And then the second, the two other comments. The second is that I think it would be helpful to actually have a kind of separate enumeration of just what are some of the things that are baseline expectations, because as you all were talking, there have been years of maybe not baseline expectations. And I think that if we're all on the same page in terms of what those are or what should be those baseline expectations, that helps move it forward. And the third is, I think generally, how does one stop a trustee or a situation when one moves beyond a particular boundary, because those were in the comments in the self-evaluation. So I want to make sure that we all understand too what the recourse would be, because that is practical application and we need to figure that out. I think Deanna has a question.
Yes, just to piggyback off what President Reese was saying, I think having a clear protocol of how to handle some of these situations, especially someone coming in new, making sure that we're very clear as to what to do if any of these situations do come up. Because like for me, coming into this, people discouraged me from running for this position because of the dysfunction of this board. And so, knowing what to do if something happens to me that way, because I don't imagine myself, carrying on in that particular manner. But if something were to happen to me, in open or closed session, having a very clear idea of what it is that I do next to be able to address it as it happens is going to be very helpful for me.
Other reactions? Okay, so one thing that the idea or the recommendation that Trustee Jenkins made of when you're offended or if you commit an offense, that you have a conversation, a kind of first level conversation with the person before going to the action the Code of Ethics says you should take by going to the president. Just try to resolve whatever it is informally yourself before taking it to the quote unquote next level in terms of disputes or, so we've got the area of disputes between board members. And then we have verbal attacks. Is that too strong? Verbal
It's not.
attacks. Verbal attacks. And then a third category. So, and I'm not sure, I guess in your code of conduct, that would come under, and a verbal attack. And then when they happen in open session, how do you think that should be handled? Somebody just starts attacking the chancellor or another board member. What do you want that protocol to be? What should happen?
The board president should step in and redirect back to order, redirect the issue back to order. On Zoom, it's unfortunate because, you know, I've not done this very often, but I have muted people out, trustees out, if they continue to, you know, badger or continuing a fight amongst each other or whatever, the conversation is out of control. If they're not adhering to the president pulling the meeting back to order, you can take a temporary recess. If things are that out of control, you can put everyone on recess. That means that it's really crucial that the board clerk and tech support provide co-chair or co-hosting in this Zoom environment to your board chair, because it's your board chair who can who can pause the meeting for everyone just to cool jets for 5 minutes or just a few minutes. But it really is the chair trying to pull the meeting back together and then likely moving to a short recess if things are that heated. I think the third piece, which has not happened, is that the board chair should likely reach out maybe to those two individuals during the break to have a conversation.
I've been in a situation, yeah, where in a mic cutting situation, the person was really angry. Those can get really, just depending on the individual. So I think up front, and you're talking about it now, there has to be an agreement that's made with every board member that he or she or they will do their best to maintain control of him or herself, to just put it, you know, have that stated. I think because sometimes we don't say things out loud, people aren't aware, and state what the consequences will be. If you appear to be out of control in the judgment of the board president or board chair, whatever title you use, and you're asked to cease and desist, the board chair will either pause the meeting or cut the mic. So people know that in advance, but I think everybody would have to say, I agree to that, because if you have one person not agreeing, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So we need to get, the consequences are, and it's all within the judgment of the board president.
Nikki, do you want to make a comment? I'll make a comment.
Yeah, can you speak up, Cindy?
Oh, I was saying, Nikki, go ahead and make a comment. I'll make a comment afterwards.
So there's actually parliamentary procedure to deal with this. If the board president presiding over a meeting makes a ruling and the individual member objects to the ruling, thinks that board president has made a ruling in error, that person can make a motion to challenge the ruling. And then there's a process for that. And if that person has a second, then there's a discussion about that ruling. And so even there, Helen, there is a process. It's not just that the board president has, authority to do whatever they want, with no recourse. It's the board president with the support of the board majority, I think is what's
Right.
critical here.
It's a due process issue, yes.
Yeah.
But the board president, everybody can be aware of, they need to understand what parliamentary procedure allows, what action will be taken, and they have the opportunity to object to that if they want. But I think if they know in advance,
Yes.
it make a difference.
Yeah, I'm a real stickler on the process stuff and on
Yes,
the
I
due
appreciate it.
process.
yes.
The other thing that I want to, Jelena, you said something that I actually disagree with, and I don't know where you've found authority for this statement. And so I think it bears some discussion. And one of the things that you said was that it was inappropriate for a board member to have direct communication with the chancellor without CCing the board officers. I don't think that's in our board policy. That's not a
I
duty
think
of-
Dr. Benjamin made a correction to that I agree with. And the correction is that without the knowledge of, and I agree completely with that, without the knowledge of. Now, and then again, that depends on the issue. If you're communicating with the chancellor to get clarity and clarification, by all means. But if you're communicating with the chancellor and giving direction and asking for reports and specifically asking and giving direction, that's an issue. It's a problem. No
Right.
one board member, not even your board president, gets to do that.
So that's the part I would absolutely agree with on
And we
that.
should get clear, and we should have input from all the trustees who are not sure about what we just said, Nikki, to make sure that there's clarity on that, because, and Chancellor and Carla will do this, if she gets a directive or any request for information that feels like a directive or direction, she will respond in that way. I will forward this to the board officers to have this discussion.
So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about things that demand time or response or seem to be directive. I'm talking about, it's like each of us is individually representing our constituents, and we are a body of equals. The president is the first among equals in that regard and has specific duties that are enumerated in board policy. We also agree that none of us acts individually to give direction. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting routine communication. For example, I sent an email to the chancellor. I happened to also CC the board president on the question about student trustees. Can we have a discussion? I would like to agendize this. If it were something that I didn't feel like, if I didn't have great relationship with the board president and I wanted to communicate with the chancellor, not to direct, but to have the communication, I don't think there's anything in law or policy that requires that. I think it's always courteous to do, but in our board, the relations haven't always been charitable. And so I wouldn't want to lock anybody into that if they felt like,
I don't think we're
but
talking
let's have
about,
that discussion.
Yeah,
I just
I
like
don't think-
clarification.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. We are talking about setting standards and norms for how we communicate. And I think that's really important. And if there's a question in your mind about whether or not this is appropriate or inappropriate, it's always best to CC your president or your board officers. I mean, if when in doubt, go the safe route.
And in general, that is what we aspire to. Absolutely, 100%. So I don't disagree with that. Okay.
the other issue, and I've witnessed it, is when board members just talk and get on diatribes and rambled totally off the subject. And I don't think you guys have had any retreat sessions on how to kind of streamline your meetings to make them more effective. And one of the reasons, and maybe you like your long meetings, that your meetings are so long is because you guys just get off the topic. You start talking about the past, bringing stuff up, and you know, just all this historical. And to what end? So that, I mean, it came up. I didn't put this in here. The going off the topic, unrelated rambling, and all those kinds of things. But I think, again, it's just my opinion, it's a case of having done it so long that it's a practice. It's just built into what you do. And the awareness of it. And of course, the board president's running the meeting and could stop that.
Okay.
So there's a lot
So
in the hands of the board president. And I know Julina did a lot there trying to control some of these things.
and might we even consider the idea of time limits though?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, because that might be something that we may need to do just to ensure that we mitigate rambling, diatribes, historical stories, for the efficiency of what we need to do.
Yeah.
How does one do that, I guess? Again, as these are new norms, right?
Yeah, and what I've seen is that at the beginning of a meeting, the board president, and it serves as a reminder, the board president can make a statement about how the meeting will be run, and the board members are asked to limit their, and you encourage participation. The first thing you want is for people to have read and reviewed the agenda before the meeting. If they have questions about items on the agenda prior to the meeting, they should send those questions to the chancellor, get as many answers as they can. It doesn't mean that they can't ask the questions in the meeting. It just means that the chancellor and the staff know what's going to be asked, so they are prepared for those things. And that helps with the flow. They know what's coming. And many times a board member will get an answer to a question in advance, and there's no need to ask the question in the meeting because the board member already has the answer.
That's right. And so we have a past
And
practice.
I'm just trying to say though, that it doesn't mean that you can still say what you want in the board meeting. It's not trying to keep you from talking, but it's to satisfy what it is you want and to have the staff prepared so that your meeting runs more effectively. I'm sorry, Julina.
Well, we have a past practice that has worked relatively well, which is when the board agenda is posted, the board president sends out sends out a communication to the entire all the trustees, asks if they have any questions. They compilate all of those questions and send them to the chancellor so that the chancellor is not reading 7 different emails that could have the same question about the same item from 7 different trustees. It's ineffective. And so the most effective way, and what Chancellor has done also, Chancellor Walter, is sometimes she will defer and let me go ahead and compilate all those pieces, because sometimes there has already been a discussion between agenda review and when it's posted that some of these issues have either been resolved or addressed. So it's just a way to manage the communication. If there's another way that trustees would like that communication to happen, they should talk about it with your board officers today.
Yes, and I had thought of another thing. It escaped me, I'm sorry. Oh, and the other thing about how do I get items on the agenda instead of just bringing stuff up, of trying to find an ingenious way to slip it in. And I don't know if at the end of your agenda, you have an item called items for further consideration or items to be agendized, where people can bring up, well, I'd like more information on thus and so. This is to keep people from bombarding the chancellor with all this stuff. I'm reliving something here, but anyway, you formalize it. The whole board agrees, though, whether or not that's something that should go. It's not just because it's an idea in your head, a make work thing for people. Is that something the board thinks is needed? Because remember, you've already established a bunch of goals on which the staff is working. And every time you bring up something that's not on that list, you're bringing up something new for the year sometimes. And you have to think about how much work these people can do and how far afield you're going from the goals you've already established. And of course, emergencies will come up. And you guys have all these extra things this year imposed on you. So those are just ways to help the staff and to keep you more organized and to keep people from rambling and getting you off your agenda.
Right, and so to be clear, if we have agenda items that board members would like on there, it would have to be it would be voted on by the board to
You would
ensure-
come to consensus or not. Yes.
We actually have a board policy
We
already.
do. We
on
do.
community development. It's board policy 2340 that people should be aware of, and we have administrative procedures. And if people read it, there's a very efficient way of getting agenda items on the agenda.
That's very true. And then I think, Helen, what has happened is spontaneous items that have come up, and the board members or several board members are very passionate about what it is that they need to come up.
Mm-hmm.
I have asked on the spot if that is the desire of the board to ask the chancellor to come back with a particular item.
Right.
Then I get direction from the board right on the spot.
Yes.
And take care of it because it has come up spontaneously, right?
Right. And that's as it should be. I mean, just because somebody says it does not mean it should happen.
Right.
Right. So an individual request, no, but you can make a spontaneous request if the mood or the environment, if there's no other way, if you can't just hold that. Otherwise, just send an email request. I mean, it's very simple. You're passionate, you've got a resolution, some community member has come to you and asked you, hey, I want you to support this resolution. Can you get it done? You send that off to your board officers, CC your chancellor, it's a done deal, right?
Yes.
Or a particular issue.
Yeah.
And relative to our goals and
yeah, the thing is, does everybody know that that's how it works? That's why the organizational meeting, the first meeting of the new president should be a reminder of maybe 3 or 4 things that make the meeting run through, things that people need to know, like how to get items on the agenda, or that maybe that's part of orientation. But sometimes long-serving members don't remember these things and need to be reminded of how they work. Everybody needs to be reminded of that code of ethics. I think there's just something about saying it out loud to put it back in your head.
Yeah.
So we have passed our break time.
The third item. So you did 2. What's the third item? So how to get items on the agenda, code of ethics. What's the third thing that needs to be reminded at the organizational structural meeting?
The code of ethics, and just a second. Oh, if there's a the violation of the code of ethics would be if people make attacks. Is that what you were thinking for the code of ethics? We talked about if people make verbal attacks, then the warning that the president will either that behavior will not be tolerated. The president will either pause the meeting take a recess if it's a live meeting, pause it if it's online, or cut the mic. One of those 2 things. And then the person has the right to, what's the word, Nikki? I wanted to say appeal, but it's not appeal, but to
challenge
that. And you go through Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay.
And they may not. But
Can
hopefully
we clarify the distinction between an attack on a person versus a critique of an outcome or a process or policy? Because I think those are very different things, yes?
Right, because the distinction made in here was attacking a person or an idea. But any kind of attack, there should be no attacks. I think you can voice disagreement. I think what you want is you're not saying don't disagree, it's how you disagree.
Well,
It's
so
the
we
tone
need
of
some
voice, it's the
clarity
language
about,
you use, you know,
we need
that
a little
kind
more
of thing.
clarity about that. Because
And
one
not-
person's passion is another person's attack. And we don't want to squelch free speech. We
No.
don't want to stop passion. But
Right, but we don't want
to
people
maintain civility.
using profanity. I wouldn't think. I mean, we could say that's free speech, but that's offensive to people.
So I'm just asking at some point, not necessarily right here, we have a little more granular detail about what might constitute an attack so that we could agree. These are the norms that we will abide by.
Okay, I think we probably have enough. Cindy, to come up with something, you think? Okay,
Yes.
all right, so at this,
Want to make sure that we answered Trustee Delphine Polk's question about protocol. So our protocol is if something like that were to happen, then the chair would intervene. The chair would redirect the individual or individuals. And if that is not redirected, then I would either cease the meeting, pause the meeting, or mute. Actually, I would rather mute first, if that's a possibility, rather than pause the meeting. Because if the conversations could go on, I would rather it not be on stage where we're pausing the meeting and everybody has to take a recess. If the mute button could be effective in that way, I'd much rather minimize the spotlight on that particular situation. And sometimes it works if that's a possible alternative. And then if that doesn't work, then we can go into a pause of the meeting and come back after a recess. Okay, so Trustee Delphine Polk, does that sound workable?
Yes, thank you.
You're thinking, I could see you thinking, Helen.
Yes.
And so
I'm thinking very hard. You can see it on my face. But yes.
yeah, it's a challenging situation because each person has their own interpretation of all these things. And what is an attack? An attack to one, in my culture, that's not an attack. You know, so you're counting on people to exercise. I stopped using the words common sense a long time ago because it does not exist. There is no such thing. But Cindy, I'll try to get some stuff to you too. So as a follow-up to this, let's take a 10-minute break and come back here at 8 o'clock.
sounds good.
It's only 6 minutes.
I know that.
Oh, new math.
New math. Oh, it's funny. I'm doing Elevate. Is anybody doing that? It's one of those things that really help your brain, but it's too late for me. Very challenging for me.
Dr. Benjamin, I'm gonna just I'm in physically my office and I need to get home. So I'm gonna just transition to the car. I'll turn the meeting back on in the car. So I just so you know, I might not be able to plug in. I feel like there was a pull to answer a few questions, but I didn't bother because I feel like it'll get too detailed at that point.
Say, you did what?
There were some like things that were leaning towards questions for legal, but I didn't think that this was the forum to actually talk
Right.
about.
Did you make a note of those things?
Yeah, I have the notes. Yeah, I have the
Okay,
notes. I won't be
so
able to
I
take
wanted to
notes
do a little summary. You want to send them to me?
on the legal stuff. I mean, the legal stuff around like the agenda setting, board policy, the Robert's Rules of Order isn't actually formally adopted by this board. You know, there are
Okay.
things, they're like detail-y kind of things that if those are going to be where they land in terms of how they want to move themselves
Well,
forward.
see, I need to know that. So I was going to try to write a statement for Cindy. I'll have you review it for her to read at the beginning of the meeting about expectations, behavioral
Sure.
expectations. Would that be okay?
Absolutely, that would be
At the
wonderful.
beginning, so to run it by you, and if they aren't using Robert's Rules of Order, then we can do this.
They are using it more or less, but we don't have it formally. So like, for example, the like what Trustee Nikki Gonzalez-Yuen was mentioning about the procedure that one would use if there was a conflict, that we've not done that anytime recently that I know of.
The one
And
that's
that's
in the Code of Ethics?
no, like he's saying that where the board president would actually make a ruling on an issue that occurs. Like we haven't done anything like that.
That's not
And
in the process.
and he's right that does exist in Robert's Rules of Order, but that's a highly advanced version of Robert's Rules application that most boards don't engage in because there would be no need typically.
Right, but if
I don't know
someone
if
went
they
to
don't
the,
know it.
if
Huh?
someone went to the board president with an accusation of, let's just say, some illegal action on the part of a trustee
Yeah.
within the district.
Yeah.
Then the board president talks to the vice president, and that could be turned over to legal, depending on what it is.
Oh yeah. The
And
board
be-
policy, the way the board policy written, there's no issues with that, right? If there's a conflict and a trustee needs to know where to go, they should go to the president. Just like if an employee has an issue and they need to know where to go, they should go to HR. So
Right.
Similarly, the
Right.
president would be the right place. And then it's the duty of the president to take it to the next right place.
Right,
Or resolve it if possible.
okay,
So I'm gonna sign off just for a few minutes while I transition. I'll be
Alrighty.
listening.
thank you.
Thank you.
Helen,
Yes.
I don't mean to be difficult here.
No,
And
I know you don't.
I'm raising the issues that I'm raising because for many years I was in the minority on the board. And and everybody has their perspective. So I've got my perspective and I'm not expecting, like, Bill's listening here and you probably have a really different perspective about history. But from my perspective, I was attacked relentlessly as a member of the board minority. And in fact, I feel like I really was subjected to a lot of racism as a member of the board. At one point, Natasha and Joelle asked me, did I want to file a formal complaint? And I actually made the mistake of not. I should have used the formal policy to file a complaint. And then evidence could have been viewed. We could have actually had a discussion. We would have said, okay, well, what's appropriate behavior? What's not appropriate behavior? What's racist? What's not? And then it would have been out in the open. Instead, what's happened often is that accusations go flying. They happen in closed session. Sometimes they happen in open session. And then because there isn't a formal process that was followed, there's no way to sort of like, somebody says something and then it becomes fact. Somebody makes an accusation, then it becomes fact. I can't remember how many times I've been called a rogue trustee. It's like, wait, no. I have a different point of view. I'm being perfectly respectful. I'm not yelling at people. I'm not calling anybody names. I'm trying to use appropriate procedure. And yet I'm getting gavelled out when I'm trying to make a substantive point, I'm not attacking any administrator. I'm trying to ask a question. I'm trying, you know, so I'm mindful that board chairs can be quite abusive. And board presidents can be abusive. And so, you know, if you are on a board of where it's like, I'm not accountable to the board president, I'm accountable to the voters. Now, of course, civility, norms of civility, due process, all of those things are really appropriate. And like that, it's just, sometimes it's not quite as straightforward as, oh, here's the rule, follow this rule. Anyway, I don't know if I'm making any sense at all.
No, you are, but you know, it's like we tell students sometimes, I say this, I think you have to look very closely at things or at yourself. We'll have a separate conversation that's not recorded. This is being recorded. Let's talk offline.
All right, that's good. That's totally good. I'm actually really appreciating this. This is the kind of the best board retreat, most kind of deliberative that I've seen in a while. So,
Yeah, you guys just need time to work through things, I think.
yeah, I think that's right. Bill, you and I need to spend more time together, obviously. Looks like we'll have another 4
There are
years.
a lot of issues. One of the things that I think all board members have a problem with is that each individual board member, as one or two or three, have no authority whatsoever, have no power whatsoever.
No.
It's strictly the board as a whole. And when a decision is made by the board, then if it's a 4-3, the three that voted against it or opposed to it have to fold in and support it because that is the will of the board. And I think a lot of people have difficulty doing that. By the way, I'm going to have to say I'm on 3 corporate boards, all right, public corporations. A lot of the same issues we're talking about here apply to the corporations. And I've told a number of directors that you can't give orders to people in the organization. You have no authority. You're an independent director or whatever. You can't order people to do anything. It has to come as far as the board as a whole, and then the board then makes a decision. And then it conveys it to the president or the chief executive officer. Does that make sense?
Trustee Withrow, that's an important piece that we have not touched on, which is anything below the chancellor really is off limits to the trustees in terms of her staff.
If we get to the accreditation standards, it'll be in there. There's so much.
There is so much, yes. And that's probably one of the most surprising facts that as a new trustee coming in, when I realized that it was not only inappropriate, but forbidden for me to interact with faculty and staff that could be perceived as me giving direction, it was like, oh my gosh, it kind of blew up my world a little bit, right? Because I actually operate in this community in ways where I do interact with deans and faculty members because of my role at the port, but I have to let the chancellor know what that role is and what that relationship is and what that looks like and why.
Julian, I think there's a real distinction though between board interaction with administrators and board interaction with anybody who is collectively represented in a bargaining unit and has a very different line of reporting. And so,
Explain that. Oh,
Yeah.
it's 8:05. Okay.
so, you know, when we get there, let's look at the chapter and verse of accreditation standards, of what is and is not appropriate.
Well, I think sometimes you have to look at what those interactions can cause within the organization. And that could supersede anything that might be considered legal to do. How much tension, friction, confusion do certain relationships cause? And how do people perceive it? I mean, there's just so much that goes on in an organization, and especially in yours and where you are right now, all the things, all the behaviors that got you where you are. They all need to be examined. We're not examining them all tonight. We're going to move on. So thank you for taking, you know, you really got more minutes. It's 8:06. So we're going to work on some things. Trustees Jenkins and Polk, I just sent you a little information, and I copied you, Trustee Reese, and also you, Maisha, just so you would have it in case you want to project it, about a vision statement and what it is as you embark on your very important assignment for tomorrow. So now I am going to move, and I don't want to take a lot of time on this because I hope you've given it some thought. I didn't give you a reminder. Now, one of the goals is for the board, Deanna and Kevin, to identify, one of the board goals is for the board to identify areas in which they have disagreement. And I think I know a couple, but that is for them to come up with. And then tonight, we're going to identify those. If they have to do with policies and procedures, then I'll have those copies. I think I set it up so that we're okay to bring those things in the meeting tomorrow night to talk about how the board can resolve these issues, because some of these issues have come up in chancellor's work with the board. And so we need to just, I hope, identify those, and then tomorrow night we'll talk about them and see where those differences are. And then we can talk about areas of agreement that work well. I'm primarily concerned though in the areas where you disagree. And then Carla, of course, we'd like to hear you at a certain point too, if you have a list of things of which you are aware. So any volunteers to share some of those areas where you disagree, those areas that have caused tension between and among board members? Can be policies, procedures, other things, behaviors. Well, I have one. Oh, go ahead, Julina.
No, go ahead, please.
I don't want to. Go ahead, Julina. I was just going to start if nobody else was.
There's definitely a disagreement on the issue that I just raised, which is trustee interactions with staff, administrators, and faculty, either without the chancellor's knowledge. And usually around operational issues. And I just have to let everybody know I have such a major issue with this. I have a real problem with that. And I know it's different for everyone. And don't get me wrong, I know faculty member and staff members who work at the district and whom I've worked with in a number of ways in the community. And once I became a trustee, I had to just pay really close attention to that. So that's one area that is quite evident that there is differences of opinion on how that plays out as trustees.
You know, that's a good,
thank you.
That's an interesting point because the trustees, you have involvement within the institution, but you also have involvement in the community. And there are things that, well, just as one example, I'm on a standing committee on the Alameda Unified School District Board. And I make a point of informing the chancellor about issues that are raised on this particular board that's focused on what do the students and parents understand, as well as the staff of the school district. What do they understand about what's available at the Peralta Colleges? So the intent here is to get an understanding of, do they have a good feeling for, or they have a good feeling for? But I make a point of, try to make a point, probably should do more, of informing the chancellor, here's what came up, here's what was discussed. I have a contractor came to talk to me about problems with the financial interface with the district. And I notified the chancellor as well as the board president that they have an issue. But I think that's something that a lot of us that are involved in just an awful lot of things need to be cautious about, that we aren't hearing something or involved in dialogue in the community. What could be a mayor, could be an elected representative that should be fed back to whatever came out of that, should be fed to the chancellor, so the chancellor and the board president understand this was discussed. Here's some of the issues. Here's what we should be concerned about.
Okay, so I added community to that one. We'll go into more detail about these tomorrow night. I just want to get a list tonight. Areas of disagreement. I'm not sure if this, I don't know if this can be classified as an area of disagreement. I'll just throw it out for you to decide or not, but it's from my own observation. It's disagreement not between well, maybe it's between board members, I'm not sure, but between the board and the chancellor, or maybe certain members, I'm not sure exactly how it works. But when the board, when the college, when the district, the chancellor brings something to the district that's been through your governance process, and the board disagrees or doesn't accept it, or wants to repeat, or whatever happens with these things, that disagreement, I think that can cause some tension, some frustration. Observation. Do you think, as I'm thinking about your mission statement, if I have that right, it had gone through a process, it came to the board did not accept it. But it's on the agenda, so maybe, I don't know the status of that. I think it was a while ago. But things the chancellor brings to you that have been through the governance process, and then you say no. Do you think that's something you need to talk about? It's a kind of downer for the people involved. And even when it comes to hiring certain positions, management positions, you have that, you have a policy, I don't know the number, that says, I guess, that you have the last word on those positions. They go through the whole process. The board rejects. That's a lot of money, a lot of time, and whatever. And I don't know the whole story. I'm just bringing it up so you can determine whether or not it's something you need to discuss. And I've talked about this with Julina to try to get a little bit of understanding about it, but it's very demoralizing for people who've gone through those processes. Because if you have committees, you have a process that says you have committees that do this, then just cut the committees out and do them all yourself. All right, Nikki.
there are a few things that have been put on the table here that, and so if what we're doing is we're just flagging areas for discussion, then I won't follow. I tend to disagree.
Yeah, just
with
flag,
you,
if
know,
you
on
don't
this,
think
but
that's an
also-
issue.
No, so Jolene has flagged an issue. I have a completely different approach. And as we look at what our standards are, what I'd like to understand is where are these standards coming from? You know, what are they based in? If we say, oh, well, you know, here's a ACCJC accreditation standard. Okay, well, let's look at the standard and read it. If it's just your opinion about how stuff goes, that's a different thing. If it's ed code, that's a different thing altogether. And so I think we need some discussion. And then as we talk about what our preferences are, I think we need to then come back and say, okay, what is the authority for that preference? Is it
Right.
simply a value distinction, or is this grounded in law, based in law?
Right,
Policy or practice, something like that. So
yes.
that's one thing. Helen, with our most recently departed chancellor, we had a number of conflicts on personnel issues. I'm not going to go into them.
Right,
Here,
right.
it's not appropriate, but I will point out that in my 16 years on this board, I can count on 2 fingers the number of recommendations that have been brought to the board that had been rejected by a chancellor. And this particular chancellor then embarked on an entirely different process for administrative approvals. And so
Okay,
I
all
don't
right,
think
so
that's an
you
issue.
just-
I think
Yeah, I
that
don't want to go
I think
into it.
that
I'm
was-
just asking if board members think that's an issue you need to discuss. Where the
It
board-
is, yes, it is an issue we need to discuss.
Agree.
All right, we can talk about that. I'm sure it's all fair game. That's
All
fine.
right, so I'm just gonna
Um,
list this as.
I want
this
to
is-
add something to the list, and that is an understanding of shared governance and what does the ed code call for? What in fact are the 10+1 areas where we are bound by law primarily to rely on the advice of the academic senate? And what is in fact board policy in relationship to how we get advice, how we get, how we interact with, and then how we support a shared governance process. So I think those are areas where we could have fruitful discussion. I don't know that we have disagreement. I think mostly we have lack of knowledge of what the ed code calls for and what our own board policy calls for. So when you raised it in the context of, people going through the shared governance process, and I think a lot of us look at, for example, the way budgets get approved have historically gotten approved in the district. And I think a lot of us don't believe that, in fact, there was a legitimate shared governance process to approve a budget.
But it's the process you have. That,
Well,
no, we're not gonna discuss it tonight. Nikki.
Okay.
We're not. Yeah,
Okay,
I have it
good.
on the list.
Good, thank you.
All right. I have it on the list. And
You
I
have a point
solution.
of view, Dr. Benjamin.
I have a solution for that too. Okay. Other things. So I have 3. Trustee interactions with staff, administrators, faculty, what's appropriate, disagreements between the board and chancellor recommendations, and the 3rd one, how the board supports participatory governance. But participatory governance is one of my favorite topics. I just want you to know that, so I'm trying to hold myself back. Any other areas we need to look at, and we don't have a lot of time tomorrow night, but we're at least scratch the surface with some of these, where you feel there are disagreements between and among you, between you and the chancellor.
Right. So the board policy, Helen, the board policy is 7110, and that's a board policy that that I stumbled upon just a few months ago. So that one really needs to come to the forefront, because that's what's guiding the trustees in terms of how we are reviewing and appointing positions.
Okay, okay. Any others? That's, because if not, we'll just move on. Carla, do you have? Dr.
Yeah,
Wall?
thank you. I've enjoyed, I mean, I think this is a very robust conversation, and I really do think it's important for the, you know, I'm hearing people say making interesting statements. You know, I think the vision statement, sorry, the mission statement is a really good example. In that process, when I went back, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, but it's a really good example of bringing something to the board that had gone through a very lengthy and considerable participatory governance process, and that the vision statement, mission statement was rejected. And there were you know, hundreds of people who felt demoralized or deflated maybe because of that. So it's a really interesting point. And I think a lot of times what happens is we bring something to the board and it gets marred into the, well, what was the process and did you follow it? And, you know, was it right? Was it, you know, incorrect? We don't trust it, and so on. So I think we need to get to a point where there's a certain amount of trust restored, really. And I think that trust, if I could just be so bold in my short tenure with the district, I think the trust has just broken down between the board and the chancellor, Perins S. And we need to work to restore that trust, number one. Number two, I do think being able to work within some guidelines of civility is really key. And it's important to me because I think when people are looking at our district, it's, you know, that sort of behavior, you know, sends a message. So that's really all I would say at this point. And I look forward to, you know, having that trust be reinstated.
Okay, and that's a really great point, Carla. You had a meeting last night, you had a meeting last week, you have a meeting at this moment, and we were gonna go 37 more minutes. And I'm going to suggest that we end here, if it's okay with the board president, because I think you've had enough. And I think you've done quite a bit of thinking. And I think you've had some good discussion tonight. And I think this is a model for how you can behave and have a civil conversation without blowing up. Anyway, and if it's okay with you, because now I have homework as a result of this that I need to get done so I can have it for you tomorrow. Madam President, is it okay with you if we just adjourn early 36 minutes?
Is it okay with me to adjourn? Absolutely, yes. Let's do it.
That's a trick question, I think.
Right.
Okay, I don't want to wear you completely out, and it's late. Plus, it's you've done a lot, and I think it's been a good conversation. So, for the good of the order, for me, before I turn back over to Trustee Reese, is there anything anybody who wants to say in response to what we've done tonight? Anything you'd like to add? Tomorrow night we will try to focus on these things, and we're looking at your policy on delegation of authority tomorrow night as well, because that's one of the goals. We really need to look at that, and it's in here with this list we just made. Any comments, questions of me, things you want me to do for tomorrow that I might not have thought of, although I haven't shared them all with you?
I think maybe the one thing I would suggest is, I don't know how well you all can hear me, not very well.
No, we're good.
I know that we kind of talked about it informally in terms of standards, disability, and thresholds, but what would be really good, maybe at some point tomorrow, is that we actually make an articulated commitment to each one of us so that as we move forward, we are all clear that whatever disagreements about it, we've ironed out, and that we are all clear as to how we move forward. I think that that would be a really good thing to do.
I want to try to write you a list of commitments. May I do that? Just bring you a list or and see if people, and then people can add to them, but you can be thinking about your own just as a kind of place to start.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Anything else? Okay, I'm done, Madam President.
Okay, do we need a motion to adjourn? No, we don't. Why do I
I
say
think-
that if we don't really need to do that? Okay.
No, you just adjourn the meeting. Send us all away.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Have a wonderful night, everyone. We will see you at 2
Okay,
o'clock
thank you
tomorrow.
for your participation.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Tomorrow, we're at what time?
Thank you.
2 p.m.
Tomorrow
2 p.m.
is
tomorrow.
2 o'clock,
2 to 6.
2 to 6.
And then Deanna and Kevin, you'll have the statement drafted for us by tomorrow's meeting, right?
Yes.
We'll start with
Could you
that. I
send
can't
out
wait.
links again?
Thank you.
Bye, good night.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
everybody. Good night. Have a good evening.
Good.